Erev Shabbat Shalom Rabotai. We are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Megillah. We are up to Perek Bet Mishnah Vav. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'elu Nishmat, Neria ben Tzvetlana, Aranbaev, and Dediyahu ben Burcha Yisraelov, Menuchatam beGan Eden, Amen. And Le'avdil ben Chaim Lechaim, V'Refuah Shelemav, Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, Betor Shah Chulei Yisrael. The Mishnah defines the time for mitzvot that are done at night. Kol halayla kasher liktsirat ha'omer. The entire night is fit for harvesting barley for the omer. The omer was an offering of barley that was brought on the 16th of Nisan. The barley was harvested the previous night, as the Mishnah says in Masechet Menachot, chapter 10, Mishnah 3. Ulekter chalavim ve'evarim, and for burning the fats and limbs of the tamid offering on the altar. This refers to the afternoon tamid offering, which may be burned on the altar all night, as the verse states about this offering. It is the burnt offering that stays on the flame on the altar all night until the morning. However, the Meiri says it should preferably be burned during the day, and the Mishnah teaches that if it was not burned during the day, it may be burned at any time during the night. These may be done at any time during the night until dawn, these two mitzvot. The Mishnah concludes, Zaklal, this is the rule, Davar shemitzvato bayom kasher kol hayom. Any mitzvah that must be done by day may be done the entire day. Davar shemitzvato balayla kasher kol halayla, and any mitzvah that must be done at night may be done the entire night. And that is then, Rabotai, Perek Bet Mishnah Vav. We continue with Perek Gimel Mishnah Aleph. After teaching the laws of reading the Megillah, the Mishnah discusses reading passages of the Torah. Since these Torah passages must be read in public, usually in a synagogue, the chapter begins with laws concerning the holiness of a synagogue and its contents. The first Mishnah deals with selling a synagogue or one of its contents. The rule is that whenever such an item is sold, the money may not be used to buy an item of lesser holiness. This is based on the principle of Ma'alin bekodesh ve'en moridim. We raise levels of holiness and do not lower them. So the Mishnah begins, Bnei ha'ir shemachu echovah shel ir. If the people of a town sold their town square, which the commentators explain that when we say the people of the town, this refers to the Shiva Tovei ha'ir, 7 good men of the town, who were elected by the residents of the town to be in charge of the town's affairs. Now, the ruling of the Mishnah applies only where these leaders made the sale without the knowledge of the residents of the town. However, if the residents did know of the sale, the money may be used for any purpose. But again, let's read the Mishnah. If the people of the town, so referring to these 7 good men of the town who were elected, sold their town square, which has holiness somewhat like that of a synagogue because it is used for prayer services on fast days, lokhin b'dama bet haKnesset, they may use the money to buy a synagogue, which is holier because it is used for a prayer services every day. Bet haKnesset lokhin teva, if they sold the synagogue, they may use the money to buy an ark, which is holier because it houses a Torah scroll. Now, this law applies to a synagogue in a small town, which is used only by the local residents. Since the synagogue was built for them, it is owned by them alone, and they or their representatives can sell it. But a synagogue in a large town, however, which is built for people from all over, cannot be sold by the townspeople because in a certain sense, it is owned by others as well. Teva lokhin mitpachot, if they sold an ark, they may use the money to buy wrappings for a Torah scroll, which are holier because they come into contact with the scroll. Mitpachot lokhin tzvarim, if they sold the wrappings of a Torah scroll, they may use the money to buy books of the prophets or writings. Sfarim lokhin Torah, if they sold books of the prophets or writings, they may use the money to buy a Torah scroll. Now, having taught what the money received from the sale of holy items may be used for, the Mishnah teaches what it may not be used for. But if they sold a Torah scroll, they may not use the money to buy books of the prophets or writings. If they sold books of the prophets or writings, they may not use the money to buy wrappings for a Torah scroll. If they sold the wrappings of a Torah scroll, they may not use the money to buy an ark. If they sold an ark, they may not use the money to buy a synagogue. If they sold a synagogue, they may not use the money to buy a town square. For example, they may not buy a property with the intent to use it as their town square. And the law is the same for any leftover money, meaning if money is left over after buying an item of holiness, it also may not be used to buy an item of lesser holiness. For example, if the 7 leaders of the town sold books of the prophets or writings and bought a Torah scroll with some of the money, they may not use the remainder to buy something less holy. Now, the commentaries point out the Mishnah seems to contradict itself. The first part of the Mishnah states that the money should be used only to buy an item that is more holy, which implies that using it to buy an item of equal holiness is forbidden. For example, the money from the sale of a Torah scroll may not be used to buy another Torah scroll. The second part of the Mishnah prohibits using the money to buy an item of lesser holiness, which implies that spending it on something of equal holiness is permitted. So we have seemingly what sounds like a contradiction. Now, the Tosfot Yom explains that in fact it is permitted to buy an object of equal holiness, as implied by the second part of the Mishnah. The first part of the Mishnah teaches that although buying an item of the same holiness is permitted, it is preferable to buy one of greater holiness. And the next part of the Mishnah cites a dispute about selling a synagogue. And we may not sell a public synagogue to an individual who will use it only to pray there by himself, because we would therefore lower it from its previous level of holiness, since prayers of special sanctity such as Kaddish may be said only in the presence of at least a minyan 10 men. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. The sages agree with Rabbi Yehuda. They said to him, if so, then it should not be permitted even to sell a synagogue from a large town to a small town. The synagogue could service a small town that was situated nearby, but that would not be allowed according to his logic. If, as Rabbi Yehuda holds, a public synagogue may not be sold to an individual because its holiness would be reduced, then selling a synagogue from a large community to a small community should also be forbidden, since in that case too it will become less holy. Although the synagogue will continue to have a minyan praying in it, the level of its holiness will be lowered, because a synagogue in which many people pray is holier than one in which few people pray, as the pasuk in Kohelet says, "Berov am hadad melech," with the multitude of people is the king's glory. Nevertheless, a large community is permitted to sell its synagogue to a smaller community. The sages prove from this law that reducing the number of people praying in a synagogue is not a reason to prohibit its sale. So it follows, therefore, that even selling a public synagogue to an individual should actually be permitted. And Rabbi Yehuda would respond, the commentaries try to figure out what Rabbi Yehuda's response to the sages would be, that unlike selling a synagogue from a congregation to an individual, selling one from a large congregation to a small congregation does not significantly reduce its holiness, since it will continue to enjoy the presence of the minyan, and therefore the sacred communal prayers such as Kaddish and Kiddusha will still be said there. Its holiness remains essentially the same. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda could agree that selling a synagogue to a smaller congregation is permitted, and yet forbids selling it to an individual. Whereas, like we said here, the sages would tell you that you can even sell a public synagogue to an individual. For them, that would be permitted. And that is the end of today's Mishna Yomi. Everybody should have an Erev Shabbat Shalom. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.